is in here like swimwear. Yeah. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. I'm your host, Omari Salisbury. Man, and as promised, we got a big dog on set. A bulldog on top of that.
You already know, purple and white.
Man, we got Mr. K.Y. King Garrett of the Africatown Community Land Trust in the building.
Hey, peace. Good morning, my brother, Big O, man. Appreciate everything you're doing over here. Keep this media, keep the community informed, breaking stories. Got the spotlight on these, predators trying to sneak around corners. Man, great work. Salute.
It's wild over here. You know, if Wyking is really feeling the love, then he gonna leave us with some of these Build Africatown sweatshirts that he's rocking. All these prototypes.
This ain't it's official now. It's official.
Okay.
This is it's coming. For the listening audience too. They could, tune in and support by getting them some, swag,
All right, that's what's up. So man, I want to jump right into it. So Africatown Media, Africatown, basically, through what some of the initiatives from the Land Trust, man, and listening to the property owners, Ruby Holland, about a month ago, brought up that she was just basically being harassed by real estate agents, and they were very clear in the messages they were sending to say we are aggressively acquiring.
We are
housing.
predators.
Yeah, I mean they let it know. They said they had bought 45 houses. They were looking for 100 more houses. Yeah. And I mean, we put out an article about it, and kind of one thing is led to another. And the Seattle Times ended up picking it up, who definitely has much more investigative resources than us. Big shout out to Dan over there at the Times, also a bulldog. And what they found out was crazy. Daryl,
we might not give up all the networks, because then they try to be shutting us down, asking people if you're a bulldog before they give you a job, So,
hey man, can you put up that shot there, Daryl? Do we have from the Times? But so it's like advocates worry that house flippers are basically going to take advantage during Corona. This is something that they've always been taking advantage, and I think that with Corona, we've been saying that in crisis there's also opportunity, and because of Corona, this kind of story now has actually made it to very much the mainstream. This is something that's been going on. They said that this company, Buck Buys Houses, or their parent company, has bought over 600 houses. You know what I'm saying? But the Corona going on allowed it to come to a bigger platform and a larger audience, man. What are some of your thoughts? One, I know that this article is just one of many things of an ongoing story, but what are your thoughts, one, about this article, and what are the state of things as far as black property owners in the Central District?
Yeah, man, again, great work, being, ear to the street with our community. I mean, that's the power and importance of us having our own media platforms and channels so that our stories can be told, and this is a great example of that, so thank you again. Africatown, the Africatown Community Land Trust, that is the basic premise, to make sure that we have a future where we have a past in the Central District, right? And we've been working hard to preserve, develop new opportunities, and now we see it's very clear that protection of our existing property owners and homeowners is important. A lot of people may be aware of the Liberty Bank and other projects that we have influenced. We're now developing Africatown Plaza. These are affordable rental projects, but obviously we want our community to be owners. This was a high ownership community, and part of that is preserving the ownership that already exists, and particularly those that are most vulnerable to displacement as land use changes happen, properties are upzoned, that increases the taxes, people may be on fixed incomes, and they don't have access to capital, which has always been an issue as far as our developing our community. They still don't have access to the capital, and the only option they're being given is to leave the community, to sell and leave. We think that this is a bigger issue for the city of Seattle, the people that are making decisions that shape the future. We know that where we are, the moment we are in now, is based on past practices. Our community is so vulnerable based on what has happened in the past, from housing covenants, contract buying that charged us higher prices coming into the community, redlining, which prevented the flow of capital into our hands to build the community, build businesses, predatory lending, and just suppressed values. The reason why these flippers are here, because these values have been suppressed simply because black people are here. Because this land is between Lake Washington and downtown, and 5 minutes from the University of Washington, 5 minutes from hospitals, 5 minutes from all these beautiful amenities and needed amenities. And the only difference in terms of the property value is that we are not here at the rate that we were previous, and who wants the property. And so I think, HB 19, which was a legislative bill that passed in the legislature last year, unanimously through both houses of our Washington State legislature, actually documented that the past policies and practices and capital investments have disenfranchised the black community that's been here, And so with that being said, there is I think a mandate that the city officials, state, county, the policymakers, stakeholders should be reducing barriers and adding protection. So we have previously called for a moratorium. That means a stop, freeze on predatory development that accelerates displacement. We need more affordable housing development, but the predatory style, and I think this again highlights the need for such, particularly in this time. They've frozen a lot of other things. This type of development needs to be frozen until mitigation strategies to give our community the access to keep and build their property, so that we can be a part of the future of the city as well. So.
Right, and so one of the things that we talked about, even the top of this show here, is that there's hardly been a decade and maybe a year since in the last 130 years black people's existence in the Central District of Seattle, but we haven't been under attack one way or another. I know one of the Throwback Thursdays that we did probably about 2 months ago talked about a guy turn of the century, the early 1900s, came from the East Coast, bought a house on Capitol Hill. And people right now, you think Capitol Hill, you think all white, but First AME is on Capitol Hill.
That's right.
And 130, 140 years ago, you built a church where people could walk to the church.
Right.
So that'll tell you, First AME is right there. That'll tell you what the population of that area looked like. But real estate agents, 1909, 1910, they was taking black people to court trying to take their land because they said that black people brought the property value down. I mean, unfortunately, we've never had a reprieve and then actually at the turn of the century, by force, you had white people going and trying to forcefully remove people from their property over on East Madison and East Union. Then after that, you get redlined in and blackballed out. I mean, it's like we never really had, redline in.
And whiteballed out.
Whiteballed out, huh? Exactly.
You gotta be accurate.
We've never had an opportunity to just, breathe and thrive. I mean, what is the impact of that been? So
you're saying that was weed and seed before weed and seed.
Right.
Yeah, the impact is, it really speaks to what we're dealing with and what we've seen in the news about COVID-19 and black people dying at a higher rate because of pre-existing conditions, right? Health conditions. We know that, stress breaks down your immune system, high blood pressure, derived from the life experience that we have, which is consistent duress. Outside of the moments that we create from within our own, like soul food and soul music and all of these things, we create, space within this attack to have some sort of, joy and peace and in our experience. But yeah, the effects are long lasting. The effects are what we see today. The effects are, the lack of wealth. The effects are, the lack of business development and all of the things that result from that. But again, I think this is a challenge and an opportunity for, again, the stakeholders of Seattle, the policymakers, the private sector, power brokers, in terms of we hear a lot about equity, shared prosperity, you know, race and social justice, but what we're seeing in the material reality is more apartheid, right? And so if, you know, this apartheid state of, you know, affairs is going to continue, then Seattle needs to be known for that. And if we're going to move towards equity and those things that we hear about, and that Seattle really has a reputation for, you know, in other places, then those things need to be realized, you know, beyond the rhetoric. You know, the rhetoric has to be made into reality, and this presents a clear, you know, opportunity for that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have any land or space to be on or be in, then you can't exist, right? And so that, I think that's where we're at right now. We're at a crossroads. You know, we don't want to go back to the normal before this crisis. This crisis presents it disrupted everything, and it, you know, it needs to disrupt the status quo of what we were experiencing prior to this, to have a new way of being, existing, and relating. And part of that is that we have space to be in the community where we've been.
And speaking of space to be, and speaking of creating spaces, you know, I used to work for a company years ago, and I used to always say seeing is believing, you know, and I think that for everything the black community has been through in Seattle, in the Central District, Seattle proper, a lot of people don't believe. And I know one of the things the Land Trust has been big on is like, nah, man, believe this. And, you know, the Liberty Bank building is brick and mortar. It's there. It's 115 units. It's, you know, like you could touch it, you could feel it, you could go to Earl's. I mean, that Brown Girl Cooks is opening up. You guys just released a video here, just a short 1-minute video, I think, trying to inspire and let people know, like, this is real. Let's take a look at this video here, Daryl. And then we'll have White King make a comment after.
I was at the grand opening of the Liberty Bank building, and I just saw so many folks there who had dreams and aspirations of something like that happening again in our community, where once that was the norm, we developed, we build, we created, and now to have to say we got to come back and do it again, this is just the first time, was inspiring to me. I think it also, I think Africatown has created a model that others can follow, but I also think that you guys have created, you know, just an energy around the community of folks that are now believing that we can, you know, hold on to it. We're not done. You know, it's not over. The game ain't over. And sometimes, you know, when you look at that clock, you know, I'm playing sports, you know, you down 21 points in the first quarter, you can either start working harder to get back in it, or you can shut it down and say it's over. Well, you guys have let us know that the game's not over. It's not over.
All right, you know what I'm saying? It's got the vibe, the good feel, you know, the warm, fuzzy, man. Tell us about that real quick.
I mean, you know, big shout out to, you know, Greg Lewis, one of our, you know, our local legends, now executive director of YMCA East Madison, which has been a part of our community. UW graduated. You know, he went to a different high school, but, you know, that was because of, you know, the busing, mandatory busing, which was really busting up our communities. But, you know, it's good to hear that what we intended to do first, which was inspire our community at that spirit, because, you know, once your spirit is crushed, you know, that's when you're really, you know, down and out. But as long as he said, like he said, there's time on the clock, you know, if you have that spirit, you know, we remember seeing the Seahawks do it so many times, right? You know, and so we have to really embody that. Our prompt was imagine, design, and build. And that's what that, you know, represents. The Liberty Bank building, you know, looking back, being inspired by our past, the original Liberty Bank and what it was created for. And now we definitely know we have to keep protect in mind, too. We have to imagine, design, build, and protect, right, what we have, because there is, you know, a lot of predatory activity. But again, showing what's possible. You know, just on a national level, a lot of people is like, oh, well, gentrification is just a natural phenomenon, city change, da-da-da. No, this is socially engineered, you know, that, you know, we couldn't get access to capital, and, you know, redlining came from the federal government down into the private sector and insurance companies and the banks, right? And, you know, you think about the divestment, the lack of resources going into the community. These are choices that people are making, right? Weed and seed, right? You know, we look at who the population was when our community was a majority, and now, and we can say, well, who are identified as weeds and who are identified as seed? These are specific policy choices of people, you know, not some imaginary, you know, system, right? These are real people making choices, and these are the results of those choices. So if we want different results that are consistent with, again, the rhetoric that we hear about social justice, shared prosperity, equitable development, then we have to make that real in brick and mortar. And I think what Liberty Bank represents, and now Africa Town Plaza, the next project across the street, is that another way is possible. You know, development without displacement. There's smart people in this city, man, that are being brought here to solve problems like how do we build condos and communities on the moon and Mars. So you telling me we can't figure out how to have communities grow and thrive in place? Come on, you know. So different choices have to be made. This is an example. Now we know this is a choice, and if people do otherwise, then they're saying that they are okay, they're complicit, or they're part of, you know, creating this apartheid reality that is being exacerbated here in Seattle, in the greater Seattle region, King County. Martin Luther King County, to be said. So we got apartheid in Martin Luther King County. You know what I mean? People need to be held accountable for that, you know?
Ruby Holland just chimed in, and she says, we are here to win.
That's right.
Exclamation point.
That's
so
right.
Tell us now, so for people like Ruby, other people in our community, property owners, don't necessarily have to be an elder like Ruby, you know what I'm saying? But man, what is the Land Trust doing? What are the next steps? What's the call to action?
Yeah, I think, again, you know, just Liberty Bank is a great example of when we come together, what we can do. Now imagine all the people that just are seeing it and didn't participate, which is way more than the people that did participate in making it happen. How much more can we make happen if people get involved like that? And Ruby's Ruby Holland and her organization and her organizing Keep Your Habitat is another great example. This is one of our elders, you know, standing on a post. But we need to, our generation, what do they call it, X? We need to go to X and get Y. We need to get to Y. We need to start being a part of the solution. It's our time. Our grandparents, our parents, they made the community. It's time for us to add on to that. You look at like Nordstrom, right? Started off as a shoe shine spot, and each generation got new knowledge, skills, brought it back and built it into a multinational. And so we have to really look in the mirror. You know, I'm saying Generation X, guys a little bit older than me, younger, Y, and really take our post, because we are really working off the remnants, barely the fumes that are left from what, again, our parents and our grandparents did in their struggles for freedom, for liberation, for their human rights. And it's not guaranteed. Each generation has to pay its dues. Each generation has to pay its dues and make its mark. And so I think with the Land Trust, we are creating a platform, you know, an infrastructure for people to get involved in around making sure that we have space. We've been working with, even prior to this story breaking, we were working with Ruby Holland, Keep Your Habitat, and others, and around coming up with solutions so that black people who have endured when they couldn't get access to money and the land use codes wouldn't allow you to develop. I remember I had a property and we were trying to get it been a triplex. We go downtown, they wouldn't let us designate it as a triplex, right? And so now we're not given this opportunity, so we've been working to come up with solutions so that black people, property owners in this community can continue to keep their property and develop it, right, rather than just sell. So we had our first property development meetup back in January, brought different organizations, resources, up-to-date information about, tax relief and deferrals, maintenance programs for repairs. Some people need deferred maintenance. So Habitat for Humanity, Rebuilding Together, the City of Seattle programs around that, as well as contractors in our community. We don't have as many developers as we should. The founder of this community, William Gross, was a developer back in the 1880s. And we don't have developers, you know, today, you know, is a real serious statement. But we want to change that. We don't want to stay there. We want to grow our development capacity in our communities. And so the next event will be April 25th. It'll be moved online. And again, we'll be bringing experts in our communities around these different areas related to development to share this knowledge, up-to-date knowledge, and get our community connected so that we can be the builders of our future.
Fantastic. And so for those that want to get in touch with yourself or the Africatown Community Land Trust, what's the contact information?
Definitely email info@africatownlandtrust.org. Follow us on, you know, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Africatown Community Land Trust, and we'll be sharing information there. I know there's a text line. You can put the text line up, you know, for people to get information. But, you know, right now we got to hold the ground. We got to seize the time and survive so we can thrive. You know, right now we're in a survival mode, right? And so we'll be rolling out, you know, what our resources that we're able, assistance that we're able to offer to our community related to surviving COVID, and also taking this opportunity to plan a future where we are thriving after COVID, right, 19. And so that's where we're at right now. We definitely want our community to tap in and don't tap out. Tap in, don't tap out. That's the theme. You know, we got to keep repeating it. We have it in our DNA. What Kendrick said, I got loyalty and royalty in my DNA. So we need to just tap into that. We've designed the first civilizations, communities, medical systems, all of this. And we just need to get back into, you know, really thinking that we are the ones that have to be responsible for our well-being and our destiny. And we all have a role in that. We can get our children in. That's a family affair. We need the wisdom of our elders. We need the energy of our young people. We need to bring it all together and build a future where we are at our best. And that's what Africatown overall is about as an asset-based, a strength-based community development initiative. We're not focusing on just the deficits. We know about that. We know they're engineering new deficits every day, but we're going to use our strength to overcome any barrier or deficit that they try to put in front of us. That's our goal, and we're just continuing the work of those who came before us. This is not anything new, whether it was the Black Panthers, Marcus Garvey, whoever it was. You know, that first person, you know, that was like, I need to be free when they were put into captivity, keeping that spirit alive and going and doing for ourselves and making the world a better place.
All right, you heard it. And you can take the long version or the short version. I know the short version, though, is tapping in. Don't tap out. KY King Garrett, Africatown Community Land Trust, man, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? Great to have you here. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, our producer extraordinaire sits down with Seattle City Council member Kashama Sawant. You are watching the Morning Update Show right here on the Africatown Media Network.